You're watching Global Lens, the top global developments coming your way, and our top focus is going to be the fragile ceasefire between the United States and Iran that is once again under severe strain, with fresh military exchanges threatening to push the region back towards a wider conflict, even as diplomatic negotiations continue behind the scenes. But how many times have we exactly heard those statements? Over the weekend, the United States carried out what it described as self-defense strikes on Iranian military targets. According to U.S. Central Command, American fighter aircraft struck Iranian radar systems, command and control sites, and 2 attack drones along Iran's Gulf coast. Washington says the strikes were launched after Iran allegedly shot down a U.S. MQ-1 drone that was operating over international waters. Iran, however, has strongly condemned the strikes. Iran's foreign ministry accused the United States of misconduct and bad faith, saying the attacks violated the ceasefire agreement and justified defensive retaliation from Tehran.
Violations of the ceasefire are themselves indicative of U.S. misconduct and bad faith and merely intensify the existing mistrust, which rightly must always remain in our minds, in any interaction with the American side. These U.S. actions are not merely violations of the ceasefire. They constitute an act of aggression and a violation of Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter. They entitle and authorize us, in line with the right of self-defense, to undertake corresponding defensive measures. Today, we explicitly announced that we targeted the source of the aggression.
Now, soon after the U.S. operation, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps claimed that they had targeted an American airbase linked to attacks on Iran's Sirik Island. Now, whilst Tehran did not specify the location of the base, the announcement came after Kuwait reported intercepting drone and missile attacks. 94 days of this conflict, and there has been no official confirmation from the U.S. on whether any of its military assets were hit. Meanwhile, Iran has reopened most of the entrances to its underground missile facilities. That's right. Media reports now claim that Tehran still retains a significant missile capability despite weeks of bombing aimed at crippling that very arsenal. And at the heart of the crisis remains the strategic Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil shipping routes. The current negotiations are focused not only on extending the ceasefire, but also on reopening the strait and preventing another global energy shock. And interestingly, we've got an esteemed set of panelists with us on the broadcast. Even amid the latest military escalation, President Donald Trump has insisted that diplomacy is still possible. In a late-night social media post, Donald Trump claimed that Iran really wants to make a deal. We've heard that so many times before as well, and said such an agreement would be good for both the United States and its allies. At the same time, Donald Trump complained that political pressure and constant commentary around the conflict were making negotiations more difficult. But despite the strikes, despite the retaliation, and despite the continuing distrust, both sides still appear to be keeping the diplomatic channels open. With us on the broadcast, Major General Sudhakar Ji, defense and geopolitical expert, somebody who's been following this probably closer than Pete Hegseth himself. Many thanks, General, for taking out the time and speaking to us here. General, we've got a couple of aspects and factors to look at. First and foremost, before we talk about the 94th day of the Iran war, US striking Iranian sites, Kuwait intercepting those missiles, and Israeli offensive into Lebanon is only deepening and widening. First and foremost, these pictures. Iran is tightening its grip on the world's most crucial oil highway. We've already spoken about, I think it was you who told us about, they've got the sworn tactics, you've got the swarm tactics, they've got the Coast Guard, they've got the IRGC, they've got their own naval coast. All of that is happening. What do these pictures essentially tell us? IRGC fast boats on a 24/7 patrol in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, Kabir, good afternoon. Thank you for getting me for your show. To say the least, let me just give some thought process based on the inputs given by CIA.
Okay.
It's none other than CIA who's given out the input that the combat residual power of Iran as things stand today will last Iran for a conflict beyond 4 months. They have actually limited themselves to 4 months. As per my calculation, it says it will go anything up to 6 months, but at a pinch of salt, because the economy of Iran is not going to support them too long. That is one point. Second point I wish to make here is, as per my priority, there are 2 things which stand out, which should be negotiated at the earliest. Otherwise, Donald Trump himself is going to get into a thick soup. The first priority is not the enriched uranium. Unfortunately, he's attaching a lot of importance to enriched uranium because the solution over there lies in the JCPOA 2015. There is no better agreement, better solution to keep Iran away from nuclear status than the JCPOA 2015. If you go deeper into the issue, research onto the thing, there is nothing better than that. Finally, willy-nilly, he will reconcile with that. But the point of Strait of Hormuz, I'm afraid, Kabir, my sixth sense is saying that it is gone forever. It will be very difficult to negotiate and take Strait of Hormuz back from Iran and get back to the original status that is pre 28 February 2026. Why
Yeah.
am I saying this is that no other issue is going to be an enabler as a leverage for Iran except for Strait of Hormuz. If Strait of Hormuz is given, then you take it that Iran has surrendered forever, which Iran as a civilization power will never accept. Back to you, Kabir.
Fair enough. General, talking about the 94th day of this conflict, your viewpoint and your assessment of what's really been happening with the United States now saying that these were defensive strikes on radar equipment, on, those kind of installations in Iran, and Kuwait now saying that they're intercepting drones and missiles. We don't know what particular base is under attack because the CENTCOM has not really responded to that. But with the War Powers Act, with Donald Trump after that White House meeting saying that, there is some changes and reworking that needs to be done on the proposal. So on one end, negotiations continue, but we're nearing about 100 days of this conflict and still military exchanges continue. So is all of that an eyewash as all of these military exchanges continue?
The central point of all these activities which is going on is driven by one issue, and that issue is exit with victory. Now, when you say exit with victory, there is no victory in sight as far as USA is concerned. So either he says exit with fictional victory or exit with some victory which you can tell is domestic constituency, which the Americans today are worldly wise. They have understood the real, thanks to the social media and other means of communication, they know things far better than what is being told to them. So therefore, that exit with victory is going to predominate the decision making of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, the turn of events are such that he is left with no option but to carry on. That's why I have often been using the term called escalation entrapment. Onto one side of the spectrum is actually the restraint. If he restrains, well, he's doomed. If he goes to the other side of the spectrum, it is escalation. Even then also he's doomed. And more he escalates, more he gets entrapped. He's finding it very difficult to come out of it, scot-free. And therefore, he has to reconcile on the following terms. First and foremost, I know it's a very tall, it's a difficult proposition I'm making. He has to finally reconcile with whatever Iran is demanding. Not that, please don't take me amiss, I am not on the side of the Iran, but that's how the calculus is actually turning out to be. And number two, he has to forego with the enriched uranium that he has been demanding. He cannot stop Iran being a signatory of a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. It entitles a country, a member country, with enrichment up to a particular percentage for generation of electricity and power, for conduct of medical research, etc., etc. That is up to 20%. The remaining stockpile, which is 60% or more, there is a provision existing, there is a mechanism existing to dilute the thing, de-enrich, and bring it to the level which you want under the supervision of International Atomic Energy Agency. So this is a fantastic argument which Iran will be time and again will be extending, but USA at no point in time is going to accept. It will accept, as per my thinking, current thinking, the day 600,000 barrel of crude is taken by China from USA. The commitment for which was finally decided in the summit couple of days back in China, that will start a new cycle of dependency on USA for buying of crude oil that will make China pay in dollar. That would be a start point of a new cycle and giving a clear indication of having given pushback to China and also restored the status quo ante of dominance of petrodollar. This is my analysis, my thought process,
All
Kabir,
right, all
and
right.
I don't think I'm wrong. This is the technique he's following, and this is going to fall in place in the month of July, just about 2 to 3 months prior to the midterm election. July or August, you'll commence, because presently the cycle which is going on is these are the orders which have been given in the month of January or February. They will carry on till about end of June or July, and in the month of August, the cycle of China buying oil from USA will commence. That's what my sixth sense
You know
or
what,
wild
General?
thought.
Over the last 95 days, I have no qualms in saying this on record that, your analysis has been pretty much bang on. You spoke about the rope, the dope, you spoke about the escalation entrapment. All of that is severely, come to light. And look at what's happening in Israel. But I'm going to come to that in just a bit. You mentioned the stockpiles, not the uranium one. My focus is on the missile stockpiles. There are media reports that are now saying that Iran has reopened underground missile sites, and that tells us vast volumes about the limitations of the US bombings. What's your assessment on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one point which I have been actually flagging in multiple channels, including your channel. Somehow, I personally feel the CIA and the Mossad, either they have not taken into consideration the real capability, defense capability of Iran, or they have ignored certain issues, or they have taken cognizance of all this, given the input to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, at his wisdom, at his level, because he's the president of the superpower, there must be something in his mind which common man doesn't know. He has factored in all this, and he's pushing ahead for some hidden agenda which is unknown to people. But to answer your question in specific,
Yeah.
Iran, as of today, by the open source media, has got more than not 60%, it is 70 to 75% stockpile is still there. 72, and there is a thing called, as you must also keep in mind, surge capacity. When a conflict breaks out, the surge capacity is the defense capability of the defense industry to double down the capacity of production of the warlike stores. For example, you have drones produced at a cost of 20,000 a piece, and they had a capacity of how many? Around, I think this is 400 drones per day. Earlier, it
Wow.
used to be very limited now.
Yeah.
400 drones per a day means it goes up to 30, multiplied by 30, minus they have this Juma days, Friday and Saturday. And so if you minus this, it comes to roughly around 25 odd days, minimum 10,000 per month they are producing. Attrition of the expenditure, if you minus, they are still with a very handsome stockpile of drones, which are giving them a asymmetric deterrence of almost 86,000 to 1 lakh. Number one. Number two, the missiles are not as shown in the Wikipedia or the open source domain. My calculation gives me a deep conviction that even the old and outdated missiles, they have been resuscitated. They have been used with swarm drones, and swarm drones, along with multiple drones, when they fire across the Iron Dome, the interceptors in the Iron Domes are dodged and deceived, and they become ineffective. And that's how they have been able to penetrate into Israel, into the hinterland of Israel, into the military bases. And last point that you made in your
Yeah.
question
Yeah.
is about the military bases of USA. This also needs to be understood. All the 17 military bases, as per Iran, they have been hit nice and properly. And out of 17, the Kuwait is being targeted now. Why? That has to be understood. Out of all the important military bases, they have more than 17, around 31, but we count only 17. But out of this 17, Kuwait has got the largest concentration of military power. Largest concentration in the sense of, you call about the troops, you call about the air assets, you call about the high altitude
Actual boots on the line and
intelligence,
actual,
radars,
money
everything.
deployment.
Yeah, that's what. You
Yeah.
see, they have started from Kuwait because it's a clear signal that you get back. Do not restore the status quo ante of the military bases. They don't want army bases of or the armed forces bases of USA to come back to their location, which they had decimated, they had
Yeah.
destroyed in the earlier 40 days of conflict. Because
All right.
this time,
All right.
when Iran goes into use its hypersonic missile, it will be very dangerous because they have got very exact intelligence. They have got the guidance system of satellite network of China. They have got the satellite guidance of Russia as well, and they will be able to hit them point blank without any problem.
And they've shown it before as well. They've shown it before as well, General. General, before
Yes,
I let you
yes.
go, my final question. You see, of course, behind the curtains, Israel is going to expand into 70% of Gaza. Now they're going to expand their operations in Lebanon as well. But this not being able to meet each other or see each other in the eye. I'm talking about Masoud Pezeshkian and I'm talking about the IRGC. There are so many reports talking about his resignation particularly. And there is a fact check done by the Iranian state television also. But, you know, we've spoken about how with the incoming of Zol Gadar, the IRGC, you know, hardline stand that has been on display, it was a big shadow during the discussions and talks that took place in Islamabad as well. What's your reading on the Pezeshkian resignation, the reports of the same, IRGC versus the state leadership?
Kabir, without actually going too much into details, any country in place of Iran, having been subjected to such surprise attack like the way it happened on 28th of February, thereafter 40 days of conflict, and thereafter, I would say, blow hot and blow cold, negotiations not taking off in any direction, and major leadership having been actually decimated or decapitated, any country in its place would be, unsettled.
Yeah.
So Iran is no exception. We may be calling it as a civilization power or anything. There is going to be a difference in opinion. There is going to be a power tussle going on. IRGC, we know, is the predominant architecture of power and authority in Iran as things stand today. But IRGC alone cannot, because the structure is so nicely architected. They have a thing called as Majlis. They have a thing called as Council of Guidance.
Yeah,
Council of Guidance. They have a thing, there are 6, 7 layers, one after another. No single agency will ever be able to pass the message directly and push it for implementation until the intervening agencies have given their stamp of authority or approval, and it goes to the supreme leader.
So
We may
basically,
say about Mustafa. Mustafa, as per me, he's still alive. He's actually commanding the roost. He is actually giving his final orders. And as per me, it may be wrong. But yes, unless there is smoke, there will be no fire. There is some problem which I'm also getting to know in the decision-making hierarchy, because president after the supreme leader is the number 2 man who is respected as an agency or authority and for approval of everything that happens. There is some difference in opinion taking place, but I am given to understand there are talks going on, they are negotiating within themselves, they have managed to resolve the issue. But these things are coming out in tricklets because Iran, the media, cannot be penetrated beyond a level. So we have to watch what happens next. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's wait for the dust to settle and your analysis. Many thanks, General, again for taking out the time and speaking to us. You're saying there are teething issues, and rightly so, because something as major as this has essentially happened. But the foundational and institutional guidelines and the structure remains firm in Iran, and that is going to stay there for long. Let's see what happens as part of this proposal reworking that's being called out by Donald Trump.